Hey everyone, and welcome back to Rank and File Sports. And today we're going to be hopping right back into our series where we are predicting every single Power 4 team's record by the start of the college football season. Today with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Now, Mississippi State is going to be near the bottom of the SEC this season. They came up with a really tough schedule and they're going to have to pull off some upsets if they want to make a bowl game this season. Taking a look at that schedule, the non-conference isn't terrible. With Eastern Kentucky to start the year, should be a pretty easy win. Arizona State on the road. They will be one of the lower rated teams in the Big 12, so this is a winnable game for Mississippi State, and Toledo at home before starting SEC play. Now, that start to SEC play is pretty tough with the Florida Gators coming to town. They're a pretty talented team that also just came away with a really rough schedule, and Florida's going to need to win every game that they possibly can in order to make a bowl game. Unfortunately for Mississippi State, this is probably one of the must-win games for Florida, so it's going to be real tough for Mississippi State to compete with a hungry Florida team here. The road trip to Texas is also going to be near impossible. Texas is a very talented team, as is Georgia after that bye week. Both of those are going to be the toughest games on Mississippi State's schedule. Following that Georgia matchup is a game at home against Texas A&M, another very talented team. The Aggies are better than Mississippi State, and this will be a tough game for Mississippi State to win at home, but it's not completely out of the question, especially with the home field advantage. They will be underdogs, but it's not a guaranteed loss by any means. Arkansas will be one of their other winnable games, this one in the SEC, and it is probably their easiest SEC game. The Razorbacks are going to be decent, but not great, just like Mississippi State this season. UMass to finish out the non-conference schedule will also be a pretty easy game for the Bulldogs. Now, this finish to SEC play, unfortunately, is very tough with a road trip to Tennessee, another really talented team with an explosive offense. And the same can be said about their last two opponents, both Missouri and Ole Miss. Just really tough games for Mississippi State to win. Overall, they've got 7 home games and 5 away games, with 5 of their opponents being ranked in the rank and file top 25, giving Mississippi State a schedule difficulty of 8 out of 10.
We have 2 guaranteed wins for Mississippi State this year, and those 2 guaranteed wins are Eastern Kentucky and UMass. Eastern Kentucky is an FCS school. We don't think Mississippi State's going to be able to perform very well in the SEC this year. We don't think they'll be at a level where they drop a game against an FCS opponent. And as far as UMass goes, they're routinely one of the worst teams in the FBS. They may be a step up from EKU, but we don't think they're going to be able to contend with the Bulldogs. As for the likely wins for Mississippi State this year, we only have one of them, and that's Toledo. Toledo's in the MAC, Mississippi State's in the SEC. We don't expect the Rockets to be able to hang with Mississippi State for longer than a quarter and a half. We think the Bulldogs will win it by 17 or more. We think Toledo, the only reason it's not a guaranteed win for Mississippi State is because we're not entirely sure about Mississippi State's potential this season. There is always a very ever so slight possibility that a MAC school could beat one of the worst SEC teams. Toledo's a respectable MAC team, so it's entirely possible that something crazy happens and Mississippi State drops this game, but we just simply don't see it. We have 3 toss-ups for Mississippi State this year, starting with Arizona State. Arizona State is one of the worst teams in the Big 12 going into 2024, and Mississippi State's one of the lower rated teams in the SEC going into 2024. So we expect this game to be a pretty close one. The game's in Tempe. ASU is the host. So we think that both teams being evenly matched are going to create a very good game that probably will be worth watching, if it's close at the end. We think that this game's going to be one that's a dark horse contender for one of the better non-conference games of the season. As far as Florida goes, Florida's a team that has more talent than Mississippi State, but that's always true. Florida still has routinely underperformed over the years. Mississippi State has been pretty stable as a team you don't want to play on the road in the SEC. Unfortunately for Mississippi State, this is a team that is not a usual Mississippi State team in the sense that it's competitive. We think they'll be, win a couple games that maybe they shouldn't, but they're just not quite at that level that they've been. But either way, we think since Florida's coach is on the hot seat, the game's in Starkville, it'll be close. And if it's close and the more talented team isn't able to pull away, we think Mississippi State has, a great chance to win this game. As far as Arkansas goes, this is an Arkansas team that, like Mississippi State, one of the lower rated teams in the SEC going into this season, but they're pretty evenly matched. Mississippi State's bringing in a new coach in Jeff Lebby. Arkansas's coach is on the hot seat, so lots of pressure for both programs and both coaches. So we expect this game to be a good one. As for the likely losses for Mississippi State, we have Texas A&M, Tennessee, Mizzou, and Ole Miss. Starting with A&M, A&M is just incredibly talented. They may not perform to expectations in a usual season, but they're bringing in a new coach for that reason. They're trying to establish themselves as a perennial powerhouse. They definitely have the potential to, but they have yet to show that. We think either way, though, they're simply too much for Mississippi State to be able to overcome, and we expect the Bulldogs to drop this game. As far as Tennessee goes, Tennessee's offense is one of the best in the country, and frankly, so is Ole Miss's. So we don't think that Mississippi State's going to be able to score enough points to be able to keep up with either the Vols or the Rebels. So we think defensively they might be able to hang around for a while, but it won't be enough, unfortunately, for Mississippi State fans. And finally, with Missouri, Missouri's a team that's on the rise in the SEC. They're you know very possibly going to make the college football playoff this season. And we think that Mississippi State's obviously not quite on that level yet, so we have to give the advantage to Mizzou. As far as guaranteed losses go, we have Texas and Georgia as guaranteed losses for Mississippi State this year. Texas and Georgia could very well end up playing each other for the national championship. Obviously, Mississippi State isn't quite on that level yet. It's going to be tough to build that program back into consistency in the SEC, just because there's so many great brands in that conference. Once you lose, relevance, it's tough to gain it back for a while. But Jeff Lebby could very well be the guy. He's a brilliant offensive mind, but we think it's going to be tough sledding for the Bulldogs in these two games.
Moving on to the schedule recap. Mississippi State will start out the year with a win over FCS Eastern Kentucky. However, we do like them to be slightly favored at Arizona State, but drop that game as their only non-conference loss. They'll come back home and beat Toledo, as well as upset the Gators at home. We do believe Florida will be favored on the road, but we like Mississippi State to win their SEC opener. Now, as for the rest of SEC play, we just really couldn't see any more wins. Texas and Georgia, there's really not any chance that Mississippi State wins those on the road. A&M at home, like I said, it's possible, but very unlikely. Arkansas, we do have Mississippi State favored. This is the one that they have the best chance of winning in our minds, but we did go with the Razorbacks on the road. UMass will be the last win of the season before those three really tough games against Tennessee, Missouri, and Ole Miss. All of those are going to be really, really tough wins to pull off as well, giving Mississippi State a record of 4-8. Now the projected record sits just a little over one win higher at 5.15 and 6.85, not quite favoring Mississippi State to make a bowl game. FPI is right around that same number, 5.1 and 6.9, and Mississippi State has only a 1.7% chance to make the college football playoffs. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future videos.